Roth conversions are one of the most popular strategies right now that we're seeing for those who are in or near retirement, especially for those who have been diligent savers. And today we're going to be talking about 5 reasons why it almost always makes sense to Roth convert. I know that sounds extreme. I know that's something I usually don't do on this YouTube channel, because when you look at financial planning, typically there's no specifics, there's no things that just always apply. It's going to depend on many different factors. And so when people ask us questions, often what we're saying is, it depends, because we don't know exactly their situation. Everyone's going to have different incomes. Everyone's going to have different amounts of investments. They're going to be different ages. And so all of that's going to play a part to see if a Roth conversion makes sense for you or not. But we're going to make it a lot more simpler today and show you the 5 reasons or why we're typically seeing people do Roth conversion in that category. And so if that's you, you're going to want to explore Roth conversions further. This doesn't mean you should just go convert everything. Make sure you're getting that professional guidance to make sure you are making the right decision, but hopefully this can open your eyes to what's out there.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
My name is Joe Schmitz. I'm the CEO and founder of a firm located in Columbus, Ohio called Peak Retirement Planning. And we work with those who are 55 to 70 who have been diligent savers, saved $1 million or more at this point in their life, who want to get more advanced planning help. And so if that's the type of planning you're looking for, then this channel will be very helpful for you. And you can go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll keep the videos coming for you here. So let's start off by talking, what is a Roth conversion? So a Roth conversion is when you take money from an IRA and move it to a Roth IRA. Now, is it that simple? Well, of course not. You're going to have to pay taxes on that conversion. And if we pay taxes, let's say of $100,000 and move it to the Roth, we're going to have to pay taxes at whatever the tax rates are today. So the question becomes, do we want to pay tax rates on it today, or do we want to wait and pay taxes on it in the future? Because we do know Uncle Sam is going to get his fair share of these investments, because when you signed up for this IRA, or maybe your 401k or 403b, you got a tax savings. You did not pay any taxes. You got a tax deduction, which means that you're going to have to owe him. You're going to have to pay him back in the future, and it's dependent on whatever Uncle Sam says the tax rates are going to be, and then as it grows, that's more of a liability that you're going to have there. And so a Roth conversion is a simple way where you could take care of this tax issue now instead of later. And so that's the idea of a Roth conversion. There's no limits on a Roth conversion. Since 2010, you can convert every dollar you have. We don't always recommend that, and we'll get into that in the video here today. But you want to make sure you're choosing the optimal amount to Roth convert. You don't typically want to just convert everything. You want to be tax smart about how you do it, and you really want to utilize some advanced tools, some software, reports, calculators to really make sure you're optimizing that, because you have to be aware of how this impacts Social Security tax, Medicare premiums, capital gains, AMT, net investment income. All this stuff plays together, and so you need to understand that so you're not putting yourself in a poor position, but also you need to look at not only now, but also what's the future going to be for you in the future. Because at the end of the day, we want to pay the least amount of taxes possible on this tax deferred dollars, on this money we saved all these years from working so hard the last 40 years. So let's talk about reason number 1. We almost always see a Roth conversion making sense. And that's for that person who's maybe retired, meaning they have no income coming in from their job anymore, and maybe they haven't selected Social Security yet. Maybe they're saying, I'm going to wait till 70 to take it, or I'm going to wait till full retirement, and I'm only 60 years old. Or maybe I'm retiring at an early age of 58. Well, now we've got a few more years until we can even start Social Security at 62. And so if that's you, you're going to have a big opportunity here to take advantage of not only the standard deduction, but also some lower tax brackets that you're going to have at your fingertips there. So let's talk about how all this works together. So for a married couple, the standard deduction is $29,200. That means that if you make up to $29,000 and that's it, you pay no taxes. But remember, in this scenario, you have no income, you have no Social Security, and let's say you haven't taken out anything from your investments. Well, your income is actually negative $29,000. And so that tells us we need to make sure we're taking out at least $29,000 from our IRA, or from our capital gains investments, which that 0% bracket goes all the way up to almost $90,000. And so we need to be utilizing these opportunities to either convert money from a IRA to a Roth IRA, like a Roth conversion is, for example, Or we need to look at harvesting capital gains. There's other opportunities we look at, but you never want to go without having any income in any year of your life. You always want to take out up to that standard deduction. But then after that standard deduction, we also have to be aware of that 10% bracket and also the 12% bracket, which in my mind is probably going to be the lowest bracket we're ever going to see throughout retirement. Now, if you're always going to stay under that standard deduction, maybe you don't have to go up to the 10 or 12%. But typically the people watching these videos have been diligent savers and they have quite a bit saved up that they may eventually be forced out of that standard deduction when they go to take Social Security, when they go to take their what's called a required minimum distribution, when they reach either 73 or 75, depending on their born. If you're born in 1960 or after, your required minimum distribution age is age 75. So that's when the government says, you've gone all these years, now it's time to pay up. If you've got $1 million, your RMD could be about $40,000 at that point, which bumps you out of that standard deduction. So if you have no income right now, we want to make sure we're not leaving any money on the table. Take advantage of standard deduction. Take advantage of 10%. Take advantage of 12%. If you do that the right way, you're looking at $120,000 or so that you can shift over to the Roth and still stay in that 12% bracket, and your effective tax rate is going to be very low to get that money over to the Roth. Pay the tax now before or later, where we don't know what tax rates are going to be in the future. And if you know me, if you watch these videos, you know that I think that tax rates are on sale right now. Right now, historically, tax rates are among the lowest that we've seen in the past, and we do know that in 2026, tax rates are going up due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expiring. And so we've got 2 more years to take advantage of this tax sale, as I call it, right now. And then we have to guess and assume of what our tax rates going to be in 5 years, 10 years, when we go to take out those required minimum distributions, when we go to take out those withdrawals from our investments to live the retirement that we've been dreaming of. Well, now we're at unknown tax rates that the government is going to tell us what they are at that point, because it's not permanent. They can make whatever they want, and we're going to be the ones subject to paying whatever they tell us to. Or we could be tax smart and do some of these planning strategies that I'm mentioning right now. So the second reason why it almost always makes sense to do a Roth conversion is for those who have been diligent savers. Now, we consider a diligent saver as someone with at least $1 million in tax-deferred investments. When we see people, the clients that we work with tax-deferred investments of $1 million or more, that's when it starts to make sense of, hey, your RMD is going to be very large, like I just mentioned, and that's going to bump your Social Security to start to become more taxable, because Social Security could be tax-free, but then it's going to force it to be more taxable. And I've actually done a video on that you can go look and see how is Social Security taxable. I thought Social Security was tax-free to me. Well, it used to, but not anymore. And so that's something that we have to be aware of, is how is this required minimum distribution that I've mentioned, how is that going to impact our future? And if we're starting to force Social Security to be taxable, we're starting to force ourselves into higher brackets, tax brackets, we're starting to force ourselves to pay more for Medicare, because that's based on your income, and that goes back 2 years. And so we don't want to end up paying double the amount for Medicare, but get the same coverage as everyone else. So you have to make sure you're planning and being proactive before that age 63 of when they calculate it when you do get to 65 for Medicare. And so if you're finding yourself with that $1 million, even if you're working, a Roth conversion is probably going to make sense for you of some sort. Maybe that doesn't mean convert everything, but maybe a small amount every year, or maybe it's a sizable amount. It's going to depend on your situation, but also how much do you have saved up there. And so a lot of people give us that thought of like, hey, I'm still working, I'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. And I always laugh at that, because that's what they've always told us. But when you actually look at it today, for those who have been diligent savers, that may not be the case. And that may not be the case because, as I mentioned, Social Security is now taxable. Now that you have these required minimum distributions from your 401k, from your IRA, that's going to bump you up tax brackets to probably be in the similar type tax bracket. And for many of our clients, they're even in a higher tax bracket, because those RMDs can be so big, the more and more you have there. And so are you really going to be in a lower tax bracket? But the other consideration is right now today, the 24% bracket is extremely large. You can do sizable Roth conversions and only pay 24% on that money. And so you have to ask yourself, do you think you'll be in a 24% bracket in the future, or higher or lower? And that's going to help you indicate what that decision is. When we run analysis for many people we work with, they're going to have a hard time finding themselves in a 24% or lower tax bracket in the future, is what we're assuming. And a lot of that is because, they may end up in the 12 or 15% bracket in the future, but now they're going to start to have Social Security become taxable, which could add really a total of another 10% tax 15% plus 10, you may be paying 25% total tax by taking the money out later versus 24% now. And so those are the considerations that we want to look at that you need to be aware of. And again, software will help you understand how Social Security plays a part in this positioning here, but it's just important you understand how it all works together. And so I just covered if you're working, but even if you're not working and have $1 million, again, it's probably going to make sense for you because you need to fill up those lower brackets. And I just mentioned in point number 1, before you take Social Security, or even when you do take Social Security, you could still have some room to do it when these tax brackets are lower right now. And if you find yourself with 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million or more, Roth conversions start to become a lot more attractive the more and more you have. And so you really want to get a plan if that's you. I mean, just think about it. If you have $5 million right now, what's 4% of $5 million? I mean, you're looking at $200,000 RMD plus Social Security on top of that, maybe a pension. You're going to find yourself in a very high tax bracket in the future at unknown rates. Maybe something we want to start getting ahead of now while we have the opportunity to. And the other consideration here that I often talk about is, how long is the Roth going to be an opportunity for us? I mean, they could easily just say, hey, Roth conversions are no longer available. Hey, you can no longer contribute to a Roth. Typically they wouldn't, if you did it today and then they change it next year, typically they wouldn't make it worse for you if you've already done it. They would grandfather you in, is what typically historical tax rules and laws say. But that's something to keep in mind, is do it while we can. We do know that we have a huge debt crisis right now. We do know that they need more revenue. That probably means they're going to take away opportunities from us, and this is something that they certainly could do. There's been no talk of this, so I don't want to bring something up that may never happen, but it's something that we do have to have an idea of, because legislative risk is one of the biggest risks we have when we plan our retirement. We don't know what rule changes are going to do that put us in a lesser position. Social Security used to be tax-free. Now it could be taxable to you if you have a higher income. There's a lot of things that happen over time that could be in our favor or may not be, and a lot of people suggest they're probably not going to make a bunch of changes in our favor considering the economic forecast that we're seeing right now. The third reason why it almost always makes sense to Roth convert is if you have a pension. So why would that matter? Well, if you have a pension, typically this is a monthly amount that you're paid out by your employer all these years, right? Federal employees, military, maybe you worked as a teacher and for a state that you live in. These are all going to be paid out to you until you pass away, which does what to your income? Of course, it raises the income, meaning that you're going to find yourself in a higher tax bracket situation every single year for the rest of your life. And then you not only have to worry about a pension, but also Social Security. And then also you have to worry about those RMDs. And then you're going to find yourself in a higher bracket. So many of our clients that we work with pensions, we're typically doing maybe more Roth conversions or a larger amount of Roth conversions, because as we plan for the future, we can always expect their income to be higher there. And just like I just mentioned in the last point, Medicare premiums can become more costly, Social Security become more taxable, and so those are things that we're trying to get ahead of. Again, if we take the money from a Roth in the future, it's tax-free. It won't impact Medicare premiums. It won't impact Social Security tax. It won't rise our tax brackets. It's not going to affect capital gains. We can easily have more control over our situation by having a diversification. And I want to make this very clear. I think this is a good time to bring this up, is typically we don't recommend all of our clients to move everything to Roth. We typically tell them to have a balance, right? We want to have the balance so that we can have control to take out whichever bucket we want to. Maybe tax rates are going to be lower in the future. No one knows. Well, let's take out from the tax deferred if that's the case, kind of like what we're suggesting right now. Or maybe tax rates are going to be really high in the future. Well, that's where the tax-free can come into play to allow us to take advantage of that opportunity. Or maybe we're starting to bump up to that Medicare tier and we still need another $20,000 of income, but if we take it from our IRA, we're going to have to pay more in Medicare. Well, what if we took that $20,000 from our Roth? Well, we can avoid that Medicare premium that could be extremely costly to your retirement. So again, the key is having control, not having all of your eggs in one basket is what we're typically trying to educate people of. The fourth reason why it almost always makes sense to do a Roth conversion is if there's a big age difference between the spouses and or if there's a big health concern for one of the spouses. Now, the main point that I'm trying to drive here is if you expect one spouse to pass away much earlier than the other one. And so if you do expect that, obviously we don't know the future and we never would hope this to happen, but there's something called the widow's penalty that we have to be very aware of. The widow's penalty basically says that if one spouse passes away, you'll go from married filing jointly tax brackets to single. And as you know, single tax brackets, you're going to be paying nearly double the amount of taxes than if you're married filing jointly. And so if you pass away, you could leave your spouse in a lesser situation moving forward. And so if your goal is to make sure your spouse is taken care of and you think you may predecease them, then getting ahead of some of these Roth conversions now will allow you to pay the taxes at the married filing jointly rates, which will most likely be more advantageous for you, versus later at the single brackets. Because again, your income is going to be pretty similar to where you're married versus single, because the only thing you're going to lose is one of the Social Security benefits. And so one of those goes away, but you're still going to have the higher of the two, and then you're also going to have the same amount of investments typically. And so if that's the case, you're going to find yourself still in higher income situations, but you're going to have more of it be taxable because of those brackets being changed. And so we really want to be aware of that as we plan. And so that's something you want to get ahead of now while you can. So let's talk about this concept a little bit further here, and let's say that both you and your spouse pass away, or maybe you're single and you pass away, and maybe your goal is to leave behind to your kids, for example. And so this would be the fifth reason of why it makes sense to almost always do a Roth conversion, is if you expect your children or that person who's inheriting this money to be in a higher tax bracket. For example, let's say that you're retired and you are finding yourself in a moderate tax bracket. Right? You've got your Social Security, you've got your investment withdrawals, you've got maybe a small pension or maybe no pension, and maybe you are sitting in that 22 or 12% or 24% bracket right now. Well, what if your child is a doctor and making a lot of money? Well, if he's in the 37% bracket and you're in the 24% bracket and your goal is to leave them a lot of money, would you rather them pay it at 37% or you pay it at 24%? Well, that's the consideration. So that's where it would make sense to do a Roth conversion, is we need to pay it at the least tax rate. Now could be it. And then also, they have to take this money out over 10 years now is the new rules. If it's in a Roth, they still have to take it out in 10 years, but they never have to pay taxes on it. If it's in a traditional IRA, they're going to have to pay taxes over a 10-year period, which speeds up their time to take it, which means that it's going to even higher their tax brackets even more, especially at those higher rates. And you may be seeing more money go to Uncle Sam than what you could keep within your family. And so for those situations, for those with legacy goals, leaving money behind to their family, want to leave behind generational wealth, we typically would look at something like a Roth conversion to start taking advantage of that opportunity and look at the rates. But at the end of the day, here's what it comes down to for Roth conversions. It's all about paying the tax rate at the lowest rate possible. And so with those 5 reasons I just went through, that was the goal. That was the idea. We're finding ourselves in a lower situation because of each of those 5 points. Let's pay the tax now versus later, when we potentially may see a higher income or see a higher tax situation, is ultimately our consideration. And if you really are enjoying this concept and you want to learn more about Roth conversions and you want to see, hey, how can this impact myself? I actually wrote a book, and it's called I Hate Taxes. I know that's a fun name for a book, and I don't personally absolutely hate taxes. I'll pay my fair share. I just don't think the government's the best steward of all of our tax-paying dollars, which means I don't want to overpay. I don't want to donate money to the IRS if I don't have to. And if you just simply read the tax code, then there's opportunities in there, such as a Roth conversion, to take advantage of that. And so in this book, I detail out all the opportunities that you have in your fingertips if you are in or near retirement, of how can you pay less in taxes? What do I need to know? What do I need to open my eyes to make sure I have a plan to pay less in taxes? And so if you are interested in that book, we'll actually do a giveaway here. And so you can actually go to the description below and we'll actually send you out the book. And as an avid viewer, go ahead and subscribe to our page and we'll go ahead and send that book out to you. When we wrote that book, our goal was not to make money on it. It was simply to get it in as many people's hands as possible. So, for all those subscribers here, for all those who are avid viewers here of this YouTube video, we'll send that out to you. Just give us some feedback of what you thought on that book, and we hope it can be helpful for you.